Poker Planet. Chapter 1. The Winnings. Ken Foster had played poker in some shady places before, but none quite like the rec room on Zeta. Station 9. The air inside was a stale cocktail of ozone engine grease and the lingering haze of alien cigars. Its walls were a patchwork of rusted steel and reused starship hulls, the kind of place where fortunes were won, lost, and stabbed for, over lukewarm ale. He sat at a scarred poker table in the back, surrounded by a strange assembly of gamblers, each more grizzled or cybernetically enhanced than the last. The lighting was dim and flickering, like the station couldn't decide whether it wanted to keep breathing or die quietly in its orbit. Ken sipped something that claimed to be whiskey, though it tasted more like solvent. His weathered face was unreadable, his gray eyes steady beneath thick brows. 55 years of hard living on edge worlds and terraforming sites had left their mark: calloused hands, a half-healed burn across one cheek, and that permanent squint of a man who didn't trust anything that looked too clean. Across the table sat a Slovenian trader, with gleaming red ocular implants that zoomed and refocused every few seconds, scanning Ken's expressions like a damn machine, because he partly was. The rest of the table had already folded. It was down to just the two of them, and the tension cracked like static in the recycled air. The pot was generous, too generous. Ken had already pushed in what was left of his credits, but then the trader smirked and pulled something else from the inside of his coat. A flat black chit etched with a silver planetary crest. It caught the light like a secret. "This one's for the pile," the trader said, tossing the chit onto the felt. "Planetary claim. Abandoned terraform job in a dead system, Virelia 7. Probably worthless, but it's mine to wager." Ken narrowed his eyes. "A planet? You're telling me that little scrap of plastic gives you rights to a whole world?" "Officially, yes. Practically, it's a dust ball nobody wants. A failed experiment." The man chuckled. "But maybe it suits a man with nothing left to lose." Ken didn't answer right away. He just looked down at his cards. They weren't great, but that didn't matter. He wasn't playing the cards, he was playing him. He saw the twitch in the man's jaw, the false confidence in his tone. The bastard was bluffing, probably always did. He tapped the edge of his cards against the table, then leaned back in his chair. "All right," Ken said slowly. "Let's play for a planet." The bartender, a tentacled being with a long memory and no love for drama, raised an eyebrow but said nothing. The final card was dealt. A hush fell around them. The trader showed his hand with a smug grin. A straight flush, high, elegant, deadly. Ken let the silence stretch. Then, with slow purpose, he laid his cards on the table one by one. Queen, 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 and then the final card, the Queen of Spades. "Five of a kind?" the trader snapped, standing up so fast his stool clattered to the floor. "That's not possible. That deck—" "Your deck," the bartender interrupted, not bothering to look up from polishing a glass. The trader's implants flared red. "This is fraud. I demand—" "You demanded a game," Ken said, reaching for the planetary chit and slipping it into his coat. "You lost." The trader spat something in an unfamiliar dialect and stormed off, muttering curses and bumping shoulders on the way out. No one stopped him. No one cared. Ken just sat there a moment, staring at the tiny silver emblem in his hand. A whole planet. A dead one, sure, but his. He hadn't come to Zeta, Station 9, looking for salvation. He'd come looking to drink until the past stopped screaming in his ears. He hadn't worked a terraforming job in over 2 years. His license had expired. His crew was gone. All he had left was his rust bucket of a shuttle and the bitterness of someone who gave the system everything and got spit out the back end. But now he had a planet. Later that night, he walked down the docking corridor, boots echoing in the empty passage. His ship, the Dust Runner, waited like an old dog, patched and pitted but still capable of taking off most of the time. He stepped aboard and set the chip on the console, staring at it as the nav systems booted. "Let's see what the galaxy left behind," he muttered. The engines roared to life, and Ken Foster took off toward a forgotten world that had no idea it was about to get a new owner. The Dust Runner hummed softly as it slid into the black automated systems taking over while. Ken sat in the cockpit, one hand on the worn leather armrest, the other holding a chipped metal cup of station-grade coffee. He stared out into the stars as the ship accelerated toward Urela 7. He reached into the pocket of his jacket and pulled out a small holodisc. A soft blue light flickered to life, projecting a flickering image, grainy and old but still beautiful. Anya. Her eyes crinkled with that same soft smile, the one he hadn't seen in over 8 years. She'd died in the second wave of the Titan flu while he was off-world on a survey mission. He hadn't forgiven himself since. "Got something strange today," he murmured, voice low. "Won a planet in a poker game. Can you believe that?" The holo didn't answer, of course. It just smiled. "I don't know what the hell I'm doing, sweetheart, but maybe this is a sign. Or maybe I've finally lost it." He set the disc gently on the dash and leaned back, letting the hum of the engines lull him into a haze. Relatio 7 came into view 12 hours later, faster than expected thanks to an old wormhole shortcut he remembered from his surveyor days. He had expected desolation, dust, a failed terraform job just like the traders said. What he got instead was breathtaking. Lush green canopies stretched across gentle valleys. Rivers shimmered like silver thread. There were clouds, real clouds, and birds wheeling in the air. The atmosphere was clean, stable, even rich in oxygen. No radiation spikes, no anomalies. Just life. Ken blinked at the readouts, then glanced outside again. "No way," he muttered. "No way, this place is supposed to be dead." He made a slow descent, landing the dust runner in a small clearing on the edge of a forest that looked almost too perfect, like something out of a nature documentary. Vines curled around ancient trees, blue blossoms the size of his head swayed gently in the breeze. The soil underfoot was soft, rich. The air smelled like spring rain. He took a few cautious steps, scanning the perimeter. No signs of civilization, no satellite network, no comms beacon. If someone was living here, they were doing it completely off-grid. A narrow path led from the clearing into the forest. Curious, and in need of a rinse, Ken followed it. After 15 minutes, he heard it. Water. Not just water, moving water, a spring or stream. He stepped through the brush and into a small glade and froze. It was a natural spring, wide and steaming gently, rimmed with smooth stones. The water was so clear it reflected the sky like glass. Without thinking, Ken stripped down and eased into the warmth. The heat soaked into his joints, melted weeks of stiffness from his shoulders. He tilted his head back, eyes closed. "You'd love this, Anya," he whispered. "You always wanted a hot spring on the farm." The forest was quiet, just wind and birds. For a long moment it felt like peace. And then a voice. "You always talk to yourself when you're naked, or is today special?" Ken nearly drowned. He twisted around, water sloshing, scrambling to stand while simultaneously trying to cover himself with a towel he'd left draped on the nearby rock. It was awkward and uncoordinated and completely futile. A woman stood a few meters away, half in the trees. She was tall, beautiful, sun-kissed, and utterly unbothered. Long, dark hair fell in gentle waves across her bare shoulders. Her clothes were minimal, light fabric that clung to her body with casual elegance. It hid and revealed her curves all at the same time. She was smiling, amused, watching him with bright, curious eyes. "I didn't think anyone lived here," Ken stammered. "Well, clearly," she said, gesturing to his frantic towel clutch. "You thought you had the whole planet to yourself." "Well, technically yes," Ken said. "I own this planet now." Ken kept the towel in place, cheeks flushing. She stepped closer, tilting her head, eyes flicking downward, very deliberately. "Oh, relax," she said, grinning. "You're built like a fertility statue. Honestly, it's kind of impressive." Ken blinked. "You're not from around here," he managed, still standing awkwardly in the water. "Nope. But neither are you." She folded her arms, still smirking. "My name's Soraya. Welcome to Virilia." Then she turned and walked back into the trees, leaving only the sound of rustling leaves, and Ken standing in the spring, stunned, dripping, and completely lost for words. Ken spent a long minute standing in that spring, blinking at the empty space where Soraya had vanished. The warmth of the water no longer reached him. His heart thumped with adrenaline and disbelief, though not entirely for the reasons he expected. A living, breathing woman, confident, relaxed, utterly at home, had just walked out of the forest on a supposedly uninhabited world and complimented his anatomy. He took a shaky breath, then climbed out, dried off, and got dressed. Viralia 7 was not what it seemed. The path Surya had taken was subtle but purposeful, woven gently through the brush without disrupting it. Whoever lived here knew how to tread lightly. Ken followed, boots soft on moss-covered ground, hand occasionally brushing against ferns with electric blue veins or vines that curled with curious motion. The air was rich with oxygen, almost heady. 15 minutes deeper into the forest, he heard faint voices. He slowed, crouching low. Through a break in the trees, he saw them, a village, small, elegant, and unmistakably advanced. The architecture was organic structures woven from living wood, and crystals arched and spiraled like shells or leaves. Some were half sunken into the hillsides, others rose into the trees, supported by grown latticework rather than nails or beams. It was a perfect fusion of biology and engineering. People moved through the village with easy rhythm. Not just a few stragglers, dozens, maybe more, all human-looking or close enough. Skin tones ranged from deep bronze to pale rose. Their clothing was practical but flowing, adorned with subtle geometric patterns that shimmered faintly in the light. They carried tools, baskets, tablets, signs of science and craft, not survivalist desperation. Ken's mind reeled. No satellites, no orbiting stations, no power grids or beacons. How the hell had they hidden all this? He stepped forward, branches cracking beneath his foot, several heads turned toward him. He froze. Then Surya appeared, casually leaning against a tree as if she'd known exactly where he'd be. "Did you get lost, statue man?" she called, her voice echoing with playful warmth. The others smiled, murmured among themselves. No one seemed surprised. No one drew a weapon, no panic, just mild curiosity, as if an unexpected visitor was cause for conversation over tea, not alarm. Ken stepped into the open. "I didn't mean to intrude," he said cautiously. "You didn't," she replied, walking toward him. "But you are definitely going to be the most interesting dinner topic in months." A few villagers laughed. Surya gestured for him to follow. "Come on, my father will want to meet you." They walked toward the heart of the village. A gentle stream ran through its center, crossed by grown wood bridges that pulsed faintly with bioluminescence. Children splashed in the water nearby, laughing. The scent of herbs, baked bread, and sun-warmed soil filled the air. Ken leaned closer to Surya. "Who are you people?" "We're survivors," she said simply. "Refugees, scholars, engineers, a few artists. All from a world that's no longer there." He blinked. "Wait, what?" She looked at him, a flicker of pain crossing her features. "Our sun went supernova 20 years ago. We were one of 3 colony arcs. Our ship made it out, the other 2 didn't. Our ship barely made it to this system. We crashed on Viralia when the terraforming program was declared a failure. There was nothing left for us off-world, so we stayed." Ken shook his head. "But there's no record, no broadcast. You're not on any register. I scanned the planet. There's nothing." She gave him a sideways glance. "You scanned with Earth tech." "We've improved on it." They turned a final corner and arrived at a large, spiral-shaped structure covered in thick, green vines that flowered in bursts of gold and violet. Inside, the space opened into a wide atrium. At the far end stood a man, tall, regal, with close-cut silver hair and a cloak that shimmered faintly with embedded circuitry. His expression was calm but discerning. Surya stepped forward. "Father?" she said. "This is Ken. He's the new owner of the planet." Ken cleared his throat. "Technically, I won it in a poker game." The man arched an eyebrow. "Well," he said with the hint of a smile, "that's new." They sat around a low table, drinking something that tasted like mint and citrus, served in ceramic cups shaped like folded leaves. Surya's father introduced himself as Irias, former science officer of the Ark vessel Yelana. He spoke with the ease of a man used to leadership but not power. Ken explained, awkwardly, how he'd come into possession of the planetary claim expecting to find a failed terraforming project or an abandoned lab. Instead, he'd found paradise. "We've kept our presence hidden, deliberately," Arias said. "After the crash, we repurposed what tech we could, rebuilt, gave up on rescue. Eventually, we decided it was better this way." "But this planet was written off," Ken said. "The company pulled funding. Everyone thinks the atmosphere collapsed during Phase 2. "Well, you were wrong," Arias said. "Some of the terraforming did take later. It was barely habitable when we crashed here. We couldn't leave. So, we fixed it," Soraya said simply. "We didn't have a choice." Ken sat back, overwhelmed. "So, what now?" Arias studied him. "That depends. You have legal claim, which means if word gets out, someone else might come. Governments, corporations, none of them will be as polite." Ken ran a hand through his hair. "I didn't ask for this. I was broke, lost everything. I just wanted to disappear. Now I've got a planet full of people who never wanted to be found." Soraya tilted her head. "Maybe disappearing led you somewhere worth being found." He looked at her, and for the first time in years something stirred behind the fog of grief and regret. Not hope exactly, but its echo. The next morning, Ken woke to birdsong and sunlight, real sunlight, not filtered through smog or station glass. He stretched, groaning as his back popped in 3 places. He'd been given a small guest dwelling near the village edge, a gently curving structure grown from local trees that somehow maintained perfect insulation and smelled like lavender and cedar. He stepped outside barefoot, breathing in the rich air. It had been years since he'd felt this clear-headed. No engine oil, no flickering consoles, no desperate repair schedules. Just a quiet morning and the faint scent of bread baking somewhere nearby. But beneath the serenity, tension lingered like a splinter under the skin. He had no idea where he stood here. Technically, the legal claim to the planet was his. In practice, it felt like he'd just dropped into someone else's hard-earned paradise. Soraya met him on the trail leading toward the village square. She walked barefoot, carrying a shallow bowl of fruit, red spiky things that turned out to be tart and juicy. "Sleep all right?" she asked, handing him one. "Better than I have in years," he said, biting into it. "Tastes like a mango crossed with a lime. Not bad for a dead world, huh?" He grunted. "That's the part I still don't get. You all did this with no support, no outside help, not even a relay beacon." "We had brains," she said. "And desperation. Turns out those make a good pair." They reached the central square, a wide, open space where morning trade had begun. There were stalls with woven baskets, produce, even holographic projection tools being calibrated for communal education. Kids darted around, playing a game that looked like some hybrid of tag and physics puzzles. Ken noticed a small group standing near the council steps. Quiet conversation. A few glances his way. Soraya followed his eyes. "Some of them think you're a problem." "I'm not surprised. 1 or 2 think you're a solution. Those are probably the ones who haven't talked to me yet." Soraya smiled. "They'll warm up, eventually." A new voice cut in. "Some of us don't warm up just because someone shows up with a land deed and a sheepish grin." Ken turned. The woman was younger than Soraya by a few years, but just as beautiful, with tighter curls, darker skin, and sharper eyes. She wore a simple but fitted wrap of pale green fabric and carried herself like someone who had read all the rule books and memorized them just to win an argument. "Neva," Soraya said with a fond but tired tone. "Good morning." "Soraya," Neva replied. Then to Ken, "So, you're the man who now owns our home." "I don't feel like I do," Ken said honestly, "and I don't plan on selling it to the highest bidder." "Good," she said crisply, "because if you try, you'll find it harder than you think. We're not defenseless." Soraya rolled her eyes. "He's not a spy, Neva." "He's still a risk." Neva looked him up and down. "People don't win planets and poker games without baggage." Ken couldn't argue with that. "You're not wrong." A long silence stretched between them. Then Neva added, You'll speak before the council tonight. All adult citizens will be there. They'll want to hear from you. Decide if they're willing to negotiate." "Negotiate what?" he asked. "Your continued presence here," she said bluntly. "You may hold the deed, but we hold the planet." Then she turned and walked off. Ken exhaled slowly. Soraya handed him another fruit. "She likes you." He gave her a look. "That's her liking me?" "Oh, absolutely," Soraya said with a grin. "She didn't call you a fungus or ask if you knew how to use a shovel. That's progress." That evening, the council chamber glowed with soft light from photosynthetic panels that pulsed gently as the sun set. The room was circular, amphitheater style, with grown stone benches arranged in tiers. Over 100 villagers sat in quiet attention, murmuring occasionally, their eyes flicking between each other and the stranger in their midst. Ken stood in the center, palms sweating. A wooden podium had been set up, though no one insisted he use it. The air buzzed with a palpable alertness. These people were thinkers, builders, planners. They hadn't survived a supernova and rebuilt a civilization by being careless. Still, Ken thought better to talk from a position of strength. But tempered. Arius rose from his seat, signaling silence. "This is Ken Foster," he said calmly. "Yesterday he arrived with legal ownership of Virieli 7, granted through a planetary token. He did not come with a fleet, he has made no threats, but he has come." A low murmur. Ken stepped forward. "I didn't know this place was inhabited," he said, trying to keep his voice even. "I expected a ruined world, something I'd drink away or walk away from, but instead I found all of you. Something real, something beautiful." No reaction yet. "I don't want to take anything from you, and I don't want to bring trouble here, but I also can't unown the planet. This planet is registered as a wasteland, basically a large asteroid circling a star. If I were to make this discovery public, I could sell it to a person or company that could come in and build a resort or something. You all would technically be squatters and removed. But I'm asking, what does sharing this place look like? Because I'd rather be part of something than the idiot who ruins it." He hesitated, and frankly, I got nowhere else to be. There was shock, then silence. Then someone stood in the back. "I say we test him," the man said. "Make him earn his keep." Another voice called out, "He can help with the South Bridge expansion." A woman added, "Or recalibrate the solar bank. He's got old world tech experience." Arius raised his hand and the crowd quieted again. "Then it is decided," he said. "For now he stays. As a resident, not an owner. Not yet." Ken nodded, relieved, but as the crowd dispersed, Neva passed close to him, voice low and cool. "Earn our trust or leave." Then she was gone. Ken sighed. "That's more like the tone I'm used to." Soraya appeared beside him with 2 cups of warm herbal tea. She handed him one. "Don't take it personally," she said. "She's like that with everyone who's not her idea of perfect." Ken took the tea, sipped, and smiled faintly. "Guess I'll just have to win her over the hard way." Ken's new life began with a shovel. Neva had assigned him to help expand the irrigation trench on the east side of the village. No easy introduction, but one he didn't complain about. The work was honest, physical, familiar in a way that eased his nerves. He'd spent most of his adult life knee-deep in soil or machinery on failing terraform projects. Unlike politics, dirt made sense. The villagers watched him warily at first, but as the sun moved overhead and Ken kept digging, sweat soaking through his shirt without a single complaint, their tension began to ease. A few even offered him water and food by midday. By the end of the week, they started nodding at him when he passed. Soraya checked in often, usually with that teasing smile that left him more off balance than he liked to admit. "Still here?" she asked one afternoon, balancing a tool basket on one hip. "Well, no one's chased me off with sticks yet," Ken replied, wiping his forehead. She smiled. "Give it time." He grinned back, but beneath the banter something was shifting. He felt it every time their eyes lingered too long. Every time she brushed his arm during a handoff. Every time she talked about the planet like it was more than land, it was family, memory, legacy. And he was beginning to understand why she was so protective. Ken quickly learned that Virelia's society was structured but flexible. Everyone contributed. There were no leaders in the traditional sense, no currency, no military ranks. Area served as something like a steward or guide, but decisions were made communally. Knowledge was shared, not hoarded. Debate was frequent and fierce, but never cruel. It was frankly unlike anything Ken had seen. He attended learning forums where young engineers discussed refining wind channels through biomorphic architecture. He watched medics use symbiotic bacteria to accelerate healing. He joined a systems crew in inspecting the underground fusion well reports tech from the original Ark, still running steady 20 years on. The deeper he dug into their world, the more stunned he became. Not only had these people survived, they had thrived, and not through conquest or capital, but through cooperation. Veralia was living proof of what civilization could be when it wasn't trying to sell itself for parts. And yet, not everyone was thrilled he was there. It started with looks. Quick glances, conversations that stopped when he entered a room. A few individuals who deliberately ignored his greetings. Then, one evening, while returning from a supply run to the hydroponic lab, he found the door to his dwelling slightly ajar. Inside, nothing was stolen, but everything had been moved. His gear, his bedding, even the small holodesk that held. Anya's image shifted, not broken but tampered with. It wasn't a robbery. It was a message. Ken sat on the edge of the cot, staring at the flickering holo of his late wife. "Looks like I'm not as welcome as I thought," he murmured. He wasn't surprised. He was an outsider who held a legal deed to their sanctuary, and no matter how friendly Soraya or Arias might be, somebody didn't want him there. He didn't tell anyone about the break-in, not yet. He wasn't sure who to trust. 2 nights later, while helping secure part of the northern ridge against storm runoff, he finally got a clearer warning. A young man named Tyrak, quiet, broad-shouldered, with an intensity behind his eyes, was working beside him, hammering supports into place. They'd exchanged only a few words over the past few days. Now, Tyrak broke the silence. "You should give the claim back," Ken kept hammering. "It's not that simple." Tyrak didn't look at him. "You being here, it upsets the balance, not just politically, emotionally, spiritually." "Spiritually?" Ken echoed, skeptical. "You don't understand what this place means to us. You didn't build it, you didn't suffer for it, but now your name's on it. That matters." Ken leaned on his shovel. "And you don't understand. If I were to refuse ownership, the guy I won it from would be suspicious. If he saw this place, he would sell it in an instant and for a tidy profit, leaving you all out in the cold. I'm not trying to take anything away. I'm trying to help you keep it." "Intent doesn't erase impact," Tyrak said flatly. "You'll never be one of us." "Maybe, but I'm not leaving." Finally, Tyrak turned to him. "Then know this, not all of us are as forgiving as Arias, or as hopeful as Soraya." And with that, he walked away. Later that night, Ken stood alone at the edge of the village looking out across the glowing wetlands. Tiny orbs of bioluminescent insects drifted like stars among the reeds. Somewhere in the distance, water trickled over smooth stones. He pulled the planetary chip from his coat pocket, the one he'd won at the poker table, now smoothed at the edges from constant handling. He turned it over in his fingers. He could burn it, erase the legal record, let the planet slip back into anonymity. Or he could continue with his claim submittal with the Galactic Register, make it official, establish control, and put the village under threat of exposure. But both of those felt like losing. "You know," a voice said softly from behind, "I'm starting to think you might actually care." He turned to see Surya, arms folded, her expression unreadable. "I do care," Ken said, "but I'm not sure if I belong." "Belonging isn't about permission," she said. "It's about choice, consistency, showing up when it matters." He nodded slowly. "And when someone breaks into your house and moves all your stuff?" She winced. "Tyrak? I don't know. But someone wants me gone." She stepped closer. "Then stay." Ken blinked. "You're not afraid of the fallout?" "If you leave now, the ones who want to control everything will win. Stay, stand your ground, we'll face it together." Their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them, shared defiance, unspoken affection, and a thin thread of possibility. Ken looked back out at the lights of the village, his fate now tangled with theirs. He took a deep breath. Then I guess I'm staying.